I could back it out, too.
You're good. Whatever's comfortable for you. Everybody, I'm so excited. Ashley Caps is in the room with me. I've been trying. We were talking about it as we were sitting down. We first made contact in May of 21, and we totally forgot why. But it's taken that long to get the man in the room and sit down and talk to me. So we're going to sit down and talk about probably not stuff that happened 2 years ago, probably stuff that's more current events and stuff like that. So we're Almost in Agreement, almostagreement@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook, on Twitter, and on YouTube. You can go to our website, almostagreement.com. Soon the Voter Guide 23 will be going up. I haven't completed it yet. But as we start getting candidates filed, we'll start filling in those and what races we have and all that kind of stuff as well. Check us out on your favorite podcast provider. That's the best way to get us out to more people. Follow us on there, subscribe on there, whatever that is, and then share and tell your friends about us. I'm going to let an intro do its thing, and then me and Ashley are going to chat. It's going to be great. Ashley Caps, everybody. I'm so excited. How you been, buddy?
I've been great. How about you?
I've been busy. I'm retiring from my day job right now. I got a couple weeks left to work that out, so I can focus on my other business as well.
Nice. Congrats.
As well as try to get some more of these in, especially coming into this year's city cycle. I want to. My goal every year is to get every candidate running. So far, I've failed miserably. Some years closer to the total number. Like this even year last year, this county stuff we had last year, that ballot was immense.
Right.
And so as much as I tried, there was no way I was going to pull that one off, especially with everything else going on. But
well, I'm not helpful towards that goal because I am running for nothing here.
Well, maybe we'll see. You got time. You got time to change your mind. Because okay. So we were talking as we were getting scheduled and all that kind of stuff about what you wanted to talk about and stuff like that. And we're trying to remember what spurred the conversation. And I know it was in something. It was probably in the Colloquy group or something like that you had commented or you made a post, and then there was some discussion back and forth. And again, I don't remember what it was. And the more I was thinking about it as we got scheduled, what I wanted to talk about is, like, I think you're a lot like me in that you're very interested in what's going on, and you're a little frustrated about the lack of ability to get some information on it. Maybe that's a strong assumption.
That's often true,
right,
on a number of subjects.
And so, like, I think part of me, just with the history of who you are in Knoxville and stuff like that, I figured you would be a little bit better on the pulse. But maybe the more true statement of that is you have a better pulse of the entertainment side of Knoxville than you do the political side. Probably. And so I think one of the things to be, the further I've gotten into this is the more people try and give up trying to get engaged and involved, and the more, especially the national picture kind of pits the two sides game and all that kind of stuff. But I don't think my argument to death is I don't think that's the majority of us. I think most people have some things they're left, there's some things they're right about, kind of stuff like that, and they're willing to have a good faith conversation. And I think especially through social media, it's hard to get those good faith conversations out. And so again, what got you to want to get more in touch with politics, I guess, is the starting point we could go with.
Well, I'm a native Knoxvillian, and I live in this community, and so I care about what's going on in the community. I want to live in a positive, vibrant place that's has a great quality of life. So politics is inherent to all of that in many ways. Right,
because I think one of the other things, too, that you and I are probably on the same page on is that there's a personal, professional part of politics that we pay attention to because it affects our jobs, regardless of who and what it is and stuff like that. But I think that at least I get the sense from you that there is a genuine community concern about things that are going on. And like, I think people are quick to jump to, there's only one way you can be involved in it, and it's either personal, professional, or I care about my community. You're either an activist or a capitalist. So like that's another one of the two little pits that happen. And I get the sense from some of the different conversations, because there was one recently, and it was something about I think it was the academies, the State 65 academies thing that you had commented on, asking some questions about like some of the different programs or stuff like that. And I'm guilty of kind of boxing you that way too. Cause I'm thinking, it's like, well, to a guy that's in this subset of industry, especially with the Chamber of Commerce talking about, the imagination economy age and that kind of thing, and how this is all going to evolve as far as what our workforce is and stuff in the future. As somebody out of your background, I could see that, the economics that go along with what they're predicting the new economy is going to be based on has a very specific professional part for you. But whatever it was, your answer is like, well, no, I'm actually curious what they're actually going to teach our kids, not just because of who they could be to me in my future. And I think that's my point. I think that a lot of people get lost on is you can't wear both shoes somehow.
Well, I certainly don't see it that way. I think as a business person, I've always been interested in problem solving. To me, one of the most inherent aspects of business is problem solving in many ways.
I agree.
And so, as far as the political aspect of things in the community, I'm fascinated, with how problems get defined. Yeah. Or how they don't get defined, and because really, if you haven't agreed on the definition of a problem, you'll never agree on the solution to the problem.
Right.
And so, I just have a general interest, I think, in problem solving. Certainly, as a business person in the community, and having worked with a lot of young people as they've come out of school. And, understanding, what their interests are, what their skill sets are, their levels of reading, writing, problem solving, critical thinking skills. All of those things come to bear, at least in our industry.
Right. One of the things I complain about all the time is what they call soft skills. And it's like I had a girl that was working for us for a while, and she was like 20. 21 years old, something like that. She didn't know how to write a check. And I was like, I don't remember when or how I learned to write a check. And I understand that this new economy doesn't use checks as much, but the idea that you could graduate high school and not know how to write a check, it just boggled my mind.
That's fascinating. There are many things that remind me daily of how old I am. So.
Yeah, that's a very nice way of calling me old too. I appreciate it. And I do. I think that's one of the scary things as I've aged and as I have kids, and I'm trying to figure out what the world is going to be for them and what the workforce is going to be for them and what skills they need to have to thrive in the future. It's just scary. I don't know. And I think that's part of why I've kind of divin? That's a bad word. I don't know. I've jumped further into politics because, politics is what allows what to happen in our schools and what our kids get taught and the directions. Like my niece is really concerned about this new 865 thing because she's in this pilot class. She's a freshman next year, so she'll be the first of this new thing at her school. And, the schooling part is like secondary in her complaint because her older sister really likes the freedom of high school where you wander around the building for different times a day. And apparently part of this new setup is it's going to kind of like, in your electives that you're choosing, the ones that are together, like grouped together as far as whatever, are in the same part of the building. And so you won't get you won't get as much of the social aspect between class, or the concern is you won't get as much of the social aspect between class as her sister did. And so again, I don't know if anybody thought about that, had any conversations about that when they were building out the idea. I get the logistics part of it of saying, whatever the academy, we're doing STEM stuff for this set of the academies, we'll put all the STEM classrooms in this one corner of the building and then it's easier or whatever. But, there's other things that kids care about. So I wouldn't have thought of that without getting her point of view on that one.
No, and there's in the world of education in particular, I think what you call soft skills, I think there are different types of learning. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we should emphasize one over the other necessarily because I think they all work together in various ways. I think one of the biggest challenges these days, I think, is so much of the focus is on easily measurable skills.
Yep.
Peter Drucker, the management guru, is credited with saying that which can be measured can be managed.
Yep.
But I don't think everything that is important can always be easily measured. And so with the emphasis these days on standardized testing and, scores, a lot gets lost in the shuffle.
Yeah.
And a lot of what gets lost in the shuffle is, a sense of play, a sense of discovery, and that very quality of imagination that our Chamber of Commerce is now saying that we lack. And,
right. And I think teacher autonomy. I think teacher autonomy is part of that too. There's so much that's pre-structured for the teacher that they can't adjust to a particular student's needs or skill set or anything like that they have to do. And again, I think it goes into testing, but I also think it goes into curriculum availability and stuff like that. And because I'm a big proponent, I'd like the state to reduce its, like, I'd like, hey, state, kick out the money that you promised to kick us out and let Knox County schools take care of themselves. Let us set up our own curriculum and stuff like that. I personally I would like to flip over the U.S. government as the way we look at government as people. I want Mayor Kincannon and Mayor Jacobs to be the one that everybody knows about. Everybody knows what they're doing. Everybody knows their stance on all parts and pieces and what they control and can't control. And then Joe Biden's the guy. He does some things over there. He's dealing with this Ukraine situation. But other than that, we don't really worry about what's going on in that town because we have our own stuff here, and that's what's important. And I think that's one of the things we've lost over the years in the way this system has evolved for us in this country. And I think schooling's one of the biggest, most definite examples is that it's been taken over by the central control thing, necessitating a measuring stick and then figuring out a way to get a measuring stick into every classroom so that we can then therefore judge and create, and then we can manage said problems. And I think that's going back to concern as a parent, that's it to me. It's like we're so wrapped up in trying to make just the state of Tennessee uniform in how we educate our kids. And it's like, kids in Memphis, kids in Knoxville, kids in, Granger County, that's a whole different, there's a whole different set of worlds out there that they're going to go into based on their community and stuff like that. And sure, some kids from rural whatever are going to come to UT and change paths and stuff like that. But I still think the idea that we're so stuck on a Memphis and a Knoxville kid to be coming out of high school the same way is, I think it's impractical for starters, but I think more importantly, it's a disservice to the kids. It drives me crazy, and I think that's one that I don't know how to address. And that's that's the worst thing about this show as I've evolved and getting more into politics is the more I am apparently pretty opposite of what of how a lot of things currently work.
Right.
And so, okay, let's put a little context on it because, I've been in Knoxville since I was 15 or whatever. I was a rock and roll kid when I was in early college. I grew out of that life. But like the AC moniker has been floating around this town for a long time. And I would love to do a series of shows with you just going through the history because I'm sure you have some great stories through all the different times and people you've gotten to meet and what you do. But so you said you were born and raised here.
That's true. I was born in Fountain City.
So give me the 5-minute biography of Ashley Capps.
I was born in Fountain City in 1955, and
he doesn't look it. Just saying, they don't get to see you. I do.
Thank you. I was born in 1955 and raised in Fountain City until the age of 18. I did go away briefly to boarding school back, my first year of high school, but I returned and graduated from Central High School. Went to the University of Tennessee. And, I'm a native Knoxvillian.
Okay. But where's the career part come in? Like, what do you do? Like, was music industry and the behind the scenes of all that, like, always part of something you're interested in? Or was that something
I didn't even know there was a music industry, really. To me, I was a music fan.
Yeah.
And I grew up with the obligatory piano lessons, and I was in the school band, first playing trombone, and then I switched to the saxophone, which I still play on occasion. As far as a career, I definitely had a passion for music that went beyond most of my peers. So I became one of those guys that was always in your ear saying, you got to listen to this, you got to listen to that. This was certainly when I was in high school. I think I was influenced by that, along that path at least, when I was at boarding school, because I met a lot of guys who were also very passionate music fans, and they really turned me onto a lot of music that I might not have discovered quite so soon otherwise. But it was in my DNA. My parents were big music fans. My father had an amazing jazz collection. He brought home the first Beatles album the day it came out. my uncles, my cousin took me to see James Brown when she was supposed to be babysitting for me when I was 8 years old.
Very nice.
And
I mean, she was babysitting. She just took you to a
she
concert.
Was. She took me to see James Brown. Yeah. It was amazing. So it was. There were a lot of influences back then that gave me a deep interest in music. But
so the whole thing was an excuse to bring the music here, so you didn't have to travel as much. Is that? I mean, that's the story. Like that's the short version of the story I'm hearing.
That is a version of the story. My father worked for Standard Knitting Mills, and they had an office in New York City. Mm-hmm. And so he was in New York probably a week a month during much of my childhood. And when I got old enough to travel with him, which was 15, 16, I started going with him to New York on a regular basis. And I would, he would take me to the jazz clubs, and I would go scrounging around the record stores in Greenwich Village. And there were a lot of things that just continued to fuel my interest in music. Never ended.
That's I think that's like I think like I said, I've been here since I was 15. That was early 90s. Like there was a New York Times or somebody put out 50 best concert cities, and we made the list. Which yes. I'm sure whether they mentioned you or not, they should have, because I'm sure it's got a good bit to do with what you've done. And like, it feels weird to me because it's not something I ever thought Knoxville could be, cause like I was, like I said, I was a little rock and roll kid when I was in college, and I ran around. We went to Columbus and traveled and did this, that, and the other. And we thought we were going to be rock stars and all that stuff. And we had some stuff come through town, but it's especially until recently when the booze got into Thompson, and Thompson started having better shows, even though I haven't enjoyed. I don't have to think about it. It's been a while. Thompson, I've been in Thompson since the remodel. Is it better, sound wise?
I haven't been there in a while myself, to tell you the truth.
I like Thompson always killed. Like, it was a sound killer to me every time I went. I saw Dave Matthews Band there in high school, which Dave Matthews is a festival band. They should be outside anyway. To put them inside was a bad idea. So I always wrote that one sounding bad off on that. But then I saw Prince there in like 07, I think. I
remember that show. That was fantastic.
It was a great time, but it's still like I struggled with it. Like, one, Prince has such a catalog that to not do a 7-hour set, you're going to miss songs that you want. So he did a bunch of medleys that I like. He did 2 medleys, which like 3 of my favorite songs were squeezed in the medleys, which is a little disappointing. But that's a consequence of being as big as he was. But I had a hard time with the sound there, and it's always been an issue with Thompson for me. And so I saw that Macklemore concert there where that was a freebie.
Oh yeah,
that was crazy. It was weird. But so with Thompson changing tune, I could see how that's brought stuff in. But I've been to a handful of shows at the Civic Auditorium. The Civic Coliseum is not really great for rock shows. It's another sound dungeon. And so, like, it just kind of struck me, like, I don't know my Knoxville as well as I used to think that we have that much stuff going on here. But apparently we do. Like, I've started reading the Blank magazine, and those lists that they compile. I was like, I can't wait. What? That venue's here? There's that many people going to this thing? And so I'm really excited for Knoxville for it. I just I don't know how I missed it. I was busy raising kids, I guess.
Well, I think it evolved organically, really, over the years. When I was growing up, there were lots of concerts at the Civic Coliseum, and then at Stokely Athletic Center, the precursor to the arena. And so as far as the big rock shows, it felt like back in those days, almost all of them were coming through town for a while. I'm
sorry to interrupt, but do you think that's a consequence of the industry adjusting and then readjusting as much as it is Knoxville being a better venue?
Well, I think what happened, it's a pretty complicated story, but I think for a while, really in the late 80s and into the 90s, the music industry definitely went through some changes. And a lot of the focus, especially in summertime, was in outdoor amphitheaters, which Knoxville has never really had.
Yeah.
And so summertime concerts bypassed Knoxville much of the time altogether until we started doing shows at the World's Fair Park,
right?
Which I did a series during the 90s called Hot Summer Nights at the World's Fair Park. And that was our attempt to fill this void from not having an amphitheater when many of the artists were, on summertime tours, as they tend to be, they wanted to be outdoors.
Right, 311 played that in
Oh yeah,
97. A bunch of my friends went to that. I didn't go to that. I wasn't a huge fan of theirs, but I remember a lot of friends talking about that one. I don't know why that one just popped in my head.
Oh, there were a lot of, Dave Matthews played down there, No Doubt, Creed, The Offspring, before the Eagles reunited as the Eagles, Glenn Frey and Joe Walsh came through and played, Tim McGraw and Faith Hill before they were married, Willie Nelson. There were so many concerts. John Fogerty. I could go on and on. I think we did I was counting it the other day. We did about 150 concerts at the World's Fair Park between 1992 and 1999.
Dang, that's a lot. When's the last time we had one down there?
It's been a while.
That wasn't the 4th of July thing.
I haven't done one there in a while. We have one coming up. The first one in probably a decade or a decade and a half or more, which is with Yo-Yo Ma and friends, which we're doing at the end of May. But once Bonnaroo launched, that was enough outdoor concerts for me. We got them all in one weekend.
Yeah. It's just do them all at once. I get it. Again, it's you start the whole thing, so you just bring all the shows to you, so you don't have to travel as much, and then you condense them all into one weekend, so you just have one weekend of greatness, and then you can just do whatever you want with the rest of the year. Makes total sense. But I think, because I was thinking about it too, is I think the industry, with the way, I'm on the Napster generation. I was a freshman at UT getting high-speed internet for the first time when Napster launched. And the way Napster and or streaming as we know it today, I think adjusted the industry where, the labels only cared about selling records. Concerts were a way to sell more records, where now the artists need their concerts to get paid at all because they don't make any money off of record sales anymore. My assumption was, without any data to prove it, but my assumption was more bands are touring more than they used to.
Well, that's certainly true that you have to tour really to make a living in the music business for the most part. And, I think the overall ecology in Knoxville, though, to use maybe a funny word for it, but I think as the Tennessee Theater, the Bijou Theater, the Mill and Mine, all of the different venues that have come online over the past couple of decades have also helped to nurture this audience in Knoxville that now is really eager to go out to many, many, many shows.
Because I do feel like we have a good range of venues volume-wise.
We definitely do.
You can get acts that can demand what's Thompson now, 20...
It can go up to over 20, 24 or something.
And so you've got the big shows at Thompson, and every once in a while the real crazy big shows in Nayland, which those are few and far between. But we had 5 scheduled, right? And then the pandemic came along and ruined that. We'll see. I knew we had some. Scheduled for Nayland, but I couldn't remember.
I can't recall the ones that were being talked about. That I don't know if they were actually scheduled or just being
maybe that's
discussed.
But then we get all the way down to a pilot.
The last one I remember was Garth, of course.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Well, and he did that. I thought that was great when he did that extended weekend in Thompson. I'm not a big Garth fan, but I love the idea of being you know what, the demand's here. Let's do one more. Let's add one more show to that weekend and just hang out for a little longer.
It was a great strategy.
Yeah, I like the way you think about it. I agree in both terms of what we're talking about here. But then you get all the way down to a little venue like the Pilot Light, where you've got acts coming in from New York and LA all the time.
That's amazing.
And that place, legally is 35 people or something ridiculous.
I don't know. We'll have to talk to Jason about that. Saying, I don't know. I'm sure I always heard something like 75 or 80.
I'm sure the fire marshal is way less than what usually ends up in there. But because I remember I played there a couple times when I was in the band when I was a kid and stuff like that. So I'm really excited about it. And my kids are getting to the age where I can dump them off on their friends and not have to worry about them. And I can start going out to concerts again. Maybe drag them along with me. I'm going to see Ben Folds here at the Tennessee Theater.
Great.
In I guess it's April.
Yep.
I'm really excited about that one. I've been a Ben Folds fan for a long time. But okay, so one of the things that I find fascinating, especially on the kind of tying the politics back in, is this issue with Ticketmaster Live Nation and, I don't know, a functional economy around a certain industry getting kind of beaten up by one big player. I don't know how to necessarily approach this with you. I don't want to put you in a spot that you don't want to. If you don't want to answer anything, it's fine. But in your history, and I'm sure you've dealt with them a lot. Was that an issue that you could see coming? Is it stuff that like you could see the problems and you could see where maybe artists and or fans were losing out to this weird system that was starting to come together?
Well, it's all of the issues surrounding Ticketmaster or any ticketing service are fairly complex. And I became an advocate for Ticketmaster coming into Knoxville in the past. I think we brought them in, finally 12 years or so ago, because I felt like they offered the service that the theaters in particular needed in order to be successful. There's a marketing component there.
Sure.
There's an ease and simplicity to things there. And, there's a lot of discussion about the fees associated with Ticketmaster, but that also becomes a complex issue. I mean, the fees are often being charged by the bank because you're using a credit card online. So there are a lot of factors that come together to make the convenience possible. I think what we've now seen emerge, however, especially post-COVID, although it was well on its way before COVID, is this dynamic pricing and the issues surrounding, what people call artists scalping their own tickets, or all of the more complicated issues around the ticketing system. And that's I can understand everyone's frustration with that. I'm frustrated with it myself. I really don't know what to say about it, and I understand the arguments. For instance, I don't know. It becomes a very complicated thing to talk about. I understand issues of dynamic pricing. I mean, let's face it. If you're buying an airplane ticket, there's dynamic pricing.
Sure.
If you buy it early, you probably get it cheaper than if you buy it the day before you go on the trip.
Right.
We all know that. But as far as the accessibility to the tickets for the fans, that's where I start to have an issue. Mm-hmm. And I know many artists have that issue. They want their fans to be able to buy the tickets at the price that the tickets went on sale for. So are there ways of managing that much more successfully than they've been managed up to this point? Yes. But it takes a lot of active engagement, and really the active engagement ultimately has to come from the artists themselves. Yeah,
and I think there's an issue. I think there's a couple issues at play, and again, I think you're right. I think it's immensely complicated because you have. I mean, we could take the banks out of the conversation, but you still have a minimum of three entities trying to come to a common number, and then the fourth entity being the customer trying to figure out how to get to be part of that thing. And so you have a lot of entities intermingling, for lack of a better word. And I do think it's one of those weird things, especially when you get to like what the catalyst of the Ticketmaster craziness was, the Taylor Swift stuff. And it's like, you created a demand that nobody thought you could do. Like, nobody could do that. I mean, this is like Michael Jackson level demand. Like, it doesn't make sense. And so to have a system that can't handle it, and then the complications and all the craziness that goes along with it, is one of those weirdisms to me, because I understand the artist side of it, saying I want my tickets at a price that my fans can afford, but you've also created a demand that demands a higher price than you want to sell your tickets for. And I don't know how to justify that as an artist.
And when you have customers out there who are saying, I'm perfectly fine paying this higher ticket price,
right?
That's, that fuels the demand as well. So it's not as simple an issue as we might like for it to be. Yeah,
because I don't know, I hadn't heard the venue side as you described it, because some of the stuff that I was reading and looking into on it was talking about how some of the Live Nation side of it really kind of put the screws to certain venues about trying to book outside of them. And I don't know if you'd had any experience in that aspect of it, or if that was maybe a one-off.
I'm not sure what you mean.
One of the allegations that was launched was that, not specifically, but let's say for example's sake, like a Mill and Mine per se, that they contract with Live Nation to book shows and do all that kind of stuff with them, but they have an open date, or they have something that they want to do separately outside of Live Nation, that Live Nation / Ticketmaster would demand that if you're going to do it, you still have to sell your tickets through Ticketmaster. Or if you're going to do it, we're going to send you less. We're going to book less with you. We're going to go move somebody else.
Well, I suppose all of the contracts are different,
right?
But,
and again, like I said,
in my
this might have been a one-off.
experience, there has been the ability to build in a certain amount of flexibility, especially, if the Bijou or the Tennessee is renting their facility to an outside entity,
right?
Sometimes that entity might be allowed to sell tickets through a different source. It's tricky though, because you have to have the seating. I mean, just the aspect of getting everything set up to, for instance, do reserve seating.
Right.
There's a software challenge with that. There's a technical challenge with that, and so using the existing system is often preferable.
Right.
More convenient,
it's easier,
really,
right.
for everybody. It's certainly easier. So
I don't know. Like
I'm kind of out of the loop on all
cool.
of this. I mean, back in the day when I was involved in negotiating these contracts, and this was before I worked for Live Nation. It was before I knew that I was going to work for Live Nation. It was when we were an independent entity, but I wanted Ticketmaster because I knew what they were able to offer.
Right.
And in my experience, we were able to negotiate reasonable fees and a flexible deal that served the interest of the theater.
Right.
But you do have to go into it knowing what it is that you need and what it is that you want, and be able to fight for that.
Right. See, I'm just not gonna pass the opportunity, since it's such a topic, to talk to somebody who's dealt with it, and because my source set is like the source set that I use in general politics and news conversations and stuff like that. They've kind of framed it as as the monopolistic giant beating up on the little guy and squeezing every penny out of everybody they can in the process. And from their angle of the story, that seems to be the truth. But here I am with somebody else that's been in and around it, and that's not the same experience you've had.
Well, I haven't had this conversation in a number of years, so what I have to say can be taken with a grain of salt.
Right.
But I would say that there are a lot of complexities that surround ticketing that you don't really understand until you get into the thick of it.
Right.
The actual costs involved, all of the different things that you need to try to, protect the interest of the fans, the artists, the audience, the venue, everyone. It can get really messy.
Yeah.
And I have worked with some artists who are very, very committed to making sure that their tickets don't get scalped. Mm-hmm. One in particular, we actually had to set up a lot of staffing. Nobody got a ticket before the show. They showed up at the venue.
Everything was all will call.
You had to have your ID, a photo ID.
Yeah.
You had to have the credit card with which you purchased tickets, and then you went directly from that booth into the venue. You could not go back out and have a beer with friends at a bar. You had to go straight into the theater.
I saw Radiohead in Atlanta on their, I can't remember what tour that was, but it was at Phillips Arena in Atlanta, and it was that way.
Right.
It was like you, and I think Radiohead's one that actually, I think they were outside of Ticketmaster, if I'm thinking about it. But it was like that. It was all will call, mm-hmm. And so it was, you showed up and it was by section too. It's like there was a little pup tent thingy, and it said if you're in section AA through CC, seats 1 through whatever, you come in here. You showed your ID. I think it was on the phone. I think you had a phone. You had like a paper ticket kind of thing that they all verified the whole thing, and then you walked straight in and you couldn't. Yeah, same kind of deal.
So, on the surface, that's protecting the customers and protecting people from scalping. But then a lot of customers get really upset about that because it can be a really tedious process.
Right.
If you suddenly can't go to the show and you want to give your tickets to a friend, you can't really do that.
Because actually, in that Radiohead show, now that I'm thinking about it, me and 3 buddies went, no, 2 buddies went. So there was 3 of us. 2 of us bought 2 tickets each because that's what you were allowed to buy. And we figured we had a 4th, and we could never get the 4th. And so I ended up selling it and met the guy, and he walked in with us. So he was my +1. So
right.
you couldn't do it in bulk at least, and I don't think I made but like $5 over value or something like that. I think he bought me beer, so I got $15 over value because it's a $10 beer inside.
Sure.
But yeah, and I've had my run-ins with scalpers and stuff like that, and it gets rough, and I get it. On both, like, and again, I think you're right. I think it's the complexity of it. It goes both ways. We want a convenient, easy to use system, but we also want it to protect. Like, I could see the artist's point of view on it for sure.
Well, there has been talk about it moving to a model that's going back to the airline model. You can't you buy your ticket, but you can't get on the plane unless you're you.
Right.
And there is a system set up to do that. Of course, getting a few hundred people on a plane and getting 70,000 people into a Taylor Swift concert is a totally different problem to solve.
Yeah, it is. So I was trying to think of some, going back to pull a little politics back in. There was, I'd be curious that there was a thought of any sort of venue security being required to have CPR training as part of the thing. Did you hear about that one? No.
When?
I think it was this year. I think it's in the State House right now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where it's at as far as process or anything. It's one of those, I could see it as a good thing, but
I don't know about the legislation. I think, having a highly trained security force is very important for major events.
Right, for big shows, for sure.
Absolutely.
I just like the idea of having a little, like a pilot light, having to have like an EMT working the door seems a little bit overkill.
That seems like overkill indeed. So I'm unaware of the specifics of that legislation. So.
All right, so one more legal state politics thing, and then I want you to go off on Big Ears for like 15 minutes or so, and tell me everybody and where they're playing. Give me the full lineup. But in a second, so last week we had the House Bill 1. And I think it's 406 or something like that. And those are the 2, let's say, less than friendly LGBTQ bills that we are passing in the state right now. And I'll take your personal view on it, but more importantly, your professional view on it and what this does to an industry like entertainment when we're making it real difficult for people of different lifestyles to live freely in this state.
Well, it's all based on fear. And I think I don't even know where to start with it, to tell you the truth, but I think it's really sad, and I think it's really unfortunate because there are already laws on the books about obscenity issues and indecent behavior. Those laws already exist. So to have this law so targeted on a specific lifestyle in a specific community seems, really misguided and very unfortunate. I think it's a bad look for our state. Yeah. And I don't think it accomplishes anything, it's except to divide people.
Sure.
Which I assume is actually the real intent.
Yeah, maybe. I like my wife in her brilliance put up a good point to me last night that I hadn't considered. You're a lifetime Tennessee, and I've been here for 20 plus years and stuff like that. And you probably more distinctly than me, you can look out the window of your house and see how much we're growing and how quickly and how fast. And one of the concerns is like, we built this thing. We were here for the whole game. We elect these people, and this is how we got to where we are. And, all of a sudden the floodgates are open and we're getting all this new attention and new immigrants from other states, if you want to call it that or whatever. And I think people are afraid it's going to change. It's going to change our East Tennessee and what we like, those core values that we kind of have and have had for years. And that, to put it in a dumb way, that some crazy liberal agenda is going to come take over our town because all these people from California, New York, and Illinois and stuff like that are moving here. And I think this is an attempt by some on the right side to show fighting back against a subset of the liberal agenda. It's not necessarily the logically right one, but an easy one to pick out in public, where like I got a little wordy on that. I apologize. If you move here from California because you didn't like living in California, the joke is like, don't bring your politics with you, right? And so I think people here are afraid of that people that are moving here are going to bring those politics that they left with them. And as a way for the current politics to show that they're trying to fight that off, I think that's part of what these current bills that we're talking about are doing. Is it's a visual show of, even though this community has been here for as long as we have.
Of course, and very active. And as someone did a little history lesson, and I remember this growing up, my father was very active in the Optimus Club, and the Optimus Club used to host female impersonators, they would call them at the time.
Right.
And everybody thought it was great fun. It was just entertainment. No one really took it, negatively or seriously. It was fun,
or for the most part, probably not that sexually either. But.
No, except for the fact that there's presumably something inherently sexual about a man imitating a woman, or vice versa.
Fair enough.
But there was nothing provocatively sexual about it. It was just it was entertainment, and when I was going to the University of Tennessee, there were drag shows all the time at the Carousel. This is back in the 70s and in the 80s and so on. No one really blinked an eye. If you didn't want to go, you didn't go.
That's such a weird concept. How does that work? I don't understand it. If you don't want to be a part of something, then don't be a part of it. That's so weird. It doesn't make any sense at all.
Yes. I think the legislation is very unfortunate.
I do too. And again, we're talking about this imagination economy that's supposed to be coming online. Whether I'll pick on him because he's on it. Whether Zachary truly hates these people existing or not, if he is at the same time going to try to talk about how he wants to grow the economy of Tennessee and wants to bring in higher dollar workforces and bring in employers that are employing people to get paid better and stuff like that. Most of the people that would fill those gaps that he's trying to create and make higher paid jobs either don't really care about the LGBT community in a negative or positive way, or they're friends with them. Mm-hmm. And so if you're trying to grow in a more creative economy, this is a group of people that's distinctly tied to that, either directly or indirectly because they're friends. And you're chasing them out, which is going to chase out the workforce too, I think, in the long term. I think this is going to have long term, this is going to have significant economic impacts.
I agree, but even more so, I think this is a classic case of how we define our problems and the solutions to those problems.
Yeah.
This is frankly looking for a problem that really doesn't exist.
Right.
The fears that are fanned in order to justify this legislation.
I got called a groomer.
You did?
Yeah. I was actually kind of proud of myself. I was feeling good about it. I was like, sure, if that's how easy it is, if I just have to say,
wow,
one thing about this being a bad idea makes me a groomer, then I guess I am.
It's just a shame that there can't be a more free and open conversation about these things without people labeling one another in such a way.
I agree. And that's what drove me nuts. This guy called me groomer, and it's I was like, you know what? Just for the sake of conversation, I'll agree with you and say that drag is inherently sexual and kids shouldn't be. But it's so is Dolly. Anybody talking about kicking Dolly out of the state? Nope. Not a chance in hell. Dolly is she is as Tennessee as Elvis.
And Dolly's a big fan of drag shows.
Yes, she is.
I think, so.
Did you see her post? Oh, she did a great post. It was a great picture of her, full boobies and everything, the whole shebang. And she said, "It's a good thing I was born a girl." And I was like, "That's perfect." She is spot on it, and I love it. Right. And that's it. Yeah, it's so frustrating. But okay, so to the fun. So on the professional side of it, real quick, is Big Ears all you're doing anymore? What else are you doing?
Well, yes.
Short answer.
As far as professionally, my focus is 100% on Big Ears as an organization, which we're primarily doing the Big Ears Festival, but we've just announced the Yo-Yo Ma event that's coming up in May. here in Knoxville as well.
Okay. Oh, okay. So it's a spinoff of the festival.
Well, Big Ears is producing it. So Big Ears is both a festival as well as a nonprofit arts organization.
So it's the promoter, period.
Yes.
Kind of the short term. Okay. I see. I didn't realize that part. That's interesting. I did not know that it was as I knew that you'd left, like you'd gotten out of the Bonnaroo section of things. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know if you had other programs and stuff that you're doing other than that. So, okay. So the Omaha coming up in May. And then what's the dates on Big Ears?
Big Ears is March 30th, 31st, April 1st, and April 2nd. So
what's
4-day weekend.
What's the funniest show for people to go to for April Fools?
The funniest show for April Fools. Wow. Now, that is a question that I should have anticipated, and I absolutely did not. The funnest show that we could go to for April Fool, there's a bunch of them actually. Now that I think about it, I think, Saturday night, April Fool's Day, I think, there's this marvelous young woman named Sierra Farrell. She just made her debut at the Grand Ole Opry at the end of November, and she's going to be performing. She's kind of country, but also she sings tango and just blends all of this great music. She's an amazing singer, and she's going to be playing. And then Bela Fleck is bringing his My Bluegrass Heart show. They'll both be playing at the Knoxville Civic Auditorium actually during the festival. And then there's this wonderful pop band Lucius who are performing at the Mill and Mine that night, and there's just so much going on.
I mean,
there's almost 200 concerts over 4 days.
Is the official lineup and schedule up yet?
The schedule is officially announced this coming Thursday.
Sweet, I got some sneak previews.
Thursday, March the 2nd will be the detailed announce of who's playing on which day and so on. We're also announcing David Byrne's coming, not to perform music, but to host his Reasons to Be Cheerful program, which is
is it the musical, or is that a different one? Because he has a what's it?
American Utopia.
Yeah, that's the musical.
Reasons to Be Cheerful is a program that he developed kind of to counteract the negative news cycle. Okay. It's really about people are out there trying to solve problems. To go back to our original conversation,
yeah.
But he likes to highlight individuals out there who have created some really innovative solutions to some of our problems in communities all over the country, and he'll be focused here on a couple of people in the Southeast that are joining him for this conversation and so on. And we're going to show some of his movies, including American Utopia and so on. He'll be around with us for the weekend, so
Neat.
We're excited about that too.
Neat. I'm a big Talking Heads fan. So
Me too.
So many things. Okay, so 4 days. How many venues?
Over a dozen.
And 200 shows.
Almost 200 shows.
Jeez.
See, probably more than 200 shows once you get the Jig and Reel and the Mill and Mine and the Pilot Light and others out there. Start counting all of them. Yes,
so unaffiliated, but it's good to having.
They're affiliated. It's just something that we push out there a little separately. So.
Loosely affiliated. Actually, you know what? I don't know why it just popped in my head. I guess because we were talking about the Old City. I think what got us chatting the original time was about the stadium project.
Oh, was it?
I think so. I think when the stadium project first kind of went from the back rooms, everybody knew it was a thing that was going to happen, to hey, we're publicly announcing we're going to do this project and stuff like that, and all the initial outcry and backs and forths and stuff like that. I think that's where we first started talking about it, because I think what you do and what that new event center, for lack of a better word, will be doing, I would have put you on the path of probably being pro having that down there. But I want to say you said something about having a little bit of concerns about the tax spending or something like that. I don't recall exactly what started it, but I think that was our first, my at least, what's the word? I just blanked on the word. The genesis for me wanting to talk to you about politics and stuff like that.
I don't recall, because I've been supportive of the stadium from the very beginning, because I do think it's a really important element to just building a thriving, successful community.
Because it should be able to fill that amphitheater gap, even though it's not as popular amphitheater stuff, but they still exist.
Right.
Because I think I'm curious to see how they set it up for venue, but I would happily go to a concert down there.
Sure. Baseball stadiums, I've done a number of concerts in baseball stadiums over the years, including Smokies Stadium, but also stadiums throughout the Southeast. And a baseball stadium concert is difficult because of the field and protecting the field and the logistics of working around the team schedule and so on. But it's also a very special experience when you're able to do it.
Yeah, and I think I'm really excited about where they're putting that. I think it's going to be a cool spot to do stuff. Like, I could see sitting down in a bleacher baseball stadium and watching a concert and loving it. Traffic over here, buildings there, the whole thing. I think it's good. Like, it will be a complete package of an experience.
It can be a really great vibe.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hopefully, parking's the one that I'm still scared of, but I don't know. I don't know how. That's always going to be a thing for downtown. I don't know how we're ever going to get past that, because what I don't want is another parking garage.
I don't really want another parking garage too. I'm so familiar with downtown. I may be an exception, but I never have problems parking downtown unless I just don't want to walk 3 or 4 blocks.
Yeah.
But as long as you're willing to walk 3 or 4 blocks, downtown's pretty easy, and parking's free much of the time.
True.
So.
The one I'm curious to see happen is when we have a Friday night baseball game, and the Smokies are pretty good, so people actually show up to the baseball game. Butler and Bailey's got a concert, Jig and Reel, Pilot Light, whatever they're building in the old Envy spot. Couple things going on in Market Square, Tennessee Theater, Bijou. Thompson's got an event as well as something at the Civic. So we got 8-9 events going on.
That'll be a big night.
Ranging from, what do we say, 75 at the Pilot Light to 20,000 in Thompson, all kind of squeezing in on our downtown. That'd be a fun night just to walk around on the sidewalks.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I remember, the first taste of that I got must have been back in the 90s or something, when I think there were 4 sold out events, one at the Tennessee Theater, one at the Bijou Theater, one at the Coliseum, and one at the Auditorium.
Yeah.
And downtown was just jamming.
Yeah.
It was so much fun.
This goes back to earlier when I say, like, I can't understand how good we are at concerts now, because I remember when downtown closed at 4:30.
Absolutely.
Like, there was, if you were downtown after 4:30 in the afternoon, you were not up to any good, because there was nothing to be doing down there.
Right. I think there was a point in the 90s where there were maybe 2 restaurants open at night downtown, maybe Regus and the Tomato Head.
Yeah.
Maybe Subway. I'm not sure when they closed.
Oh, God, that Subway, jeez. No, I do recall that Subway being there, but I don't recall ever stepping foot inside.
It has been there
because, but I mean, even
forever.
in that same stretch was at the low point of the Old City too, where the Old City never had a lot going on. Because I was there, like, my era was when, I guess, it was the same guy that moved Blue Cats from, it was the Strip. It was the one on the Strip.
Right, Gary Mitchell.
Yeah.
Moose's.
Yeah, moved Moose's.
Moose's Music Hall on the Strip,
right.
And then he went to Blue Cats.
Yeah.
Which was the former Ace of Clubs.
Right, and I remember that transition, and I remember going, and like any show that was worth seeing for me was almost always at Blue Cats, because that was the it venue, and it's small. Looking back on it, it's tiny. I don't know, man. Like I said, I don't generally. We got to talk about the Ticketmaster stuff a little bit. That was one I wanted to talk about. I wanted you to do whatever you wanted to do and make sure that anybody knows everything that need to know about what's going on with Big Ears. I've got some pitches that I want to give to you off air, but other than that, I think I'm good. I think I got everything I wanted.
Great.
This was cool. I enjoyed talking to you.
It's fun.
It is fun. Like, I think to kind of, emphasize the point, I think of what the totality of this conversation is I think that we are all complicated people who are capable of 2 thoughts at the same time. And you don't have to be a capitalist or an artist, or you don't have to be a leftist or a rightist or whatever, like whatever you want to call it, is that you're allowed to look at issues in a bunch of different ways and try to come to, my thing is there are no solutions. This is a stolen phrase. I think it's a Friedman quote. There are no solutions, only trade-offs. We got to figure out what we're willing to give up for what we want. And is this something we're willing to give up on or not, and stuff like that. So again, I think it's fantastic. I think you're you're spot on a number of topics, and it's a really enjoyable show.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, Ashley Caps, everybody. Ashley Caps, we did it. I was so excited. That was so much fun. This is my first. This is my first completely
non-political.
Not non-political, but like you're not a candidate or you're not a party member or something like that.
Not.
So you're just a cool guy to talk to. Almost an agreement at gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. You can go to our website, almostagreement.com. While you're there, bookmark it, because here in a couple of weeks I'll start getting my Voter Guide 23 put up. And go to your favorite podcast provider, give us a like and follow there, as well as telling your friends about us. We're going to keep doing shows. I've got Briggs in conversation. I'm going to see if I can get him in here sooner than later so we can talk about some of these. The hemp bill is one of mine that I'm interested in. But the abortion one is another one that's kind of big on his, because he forgot to read it the first time he signed it. So we're almost in agreement, everybody. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
I can't believe that he said that.
I know. I can believe that he did it. I just can't believe that he said it. Like I could even get behind the idea of saying, like, I didn't